Sup Sunshines, Ori got the mic. Last time we were talking about Bioshock, released in 2007, and when chiefs of 2K Games saw the commercial success of this project, they came up with the idea to make a franchise out of it. And spoilers alert, they went wrong doing it, because after all we got 2 more games in this series, and DLC. One of these games is semi-direct extension of the story of Rapture, and the other one tells about something different but ideologically close enough to be called Bioshock. As you have already guessed out of this video title, today we will talk about the first out of these two. Bioshock 2 was released in 2010 by 2K Games and developed by subsidiary company 2K Marine. And unlike its predecessor, Bioshock 2 had a stunning amount of sales for that time. But let's focus on what we've gathered here for, the plot. The story starts in 1958 from a perspective of a big daddy knocking on little sister's hideout. And this little sister, named Eleanor, comes out and greets Daddy showing a plushie of him. Our protagonist, Subject Delta, helps her to descend and she drags him further. Then Eleanor takes some Adam from a nearby corpse and runs away sensing more Adam. Delta follows her and passes through the crowd of people who are still humans, not mutated yet. Suddenly he hears Eleanor screaming, so he turns on racing mode and hurries to his little sister. In a room, he sees how 4 not-so-gentlemen oppress Eleanor to take her Adam. Delta jumps down on the one of them, drills a hole in another, and knocks the third. But when he's about to take down the last one, this man evades the attack and uses Hypnotized Big Daddy Plasmid on our protagonist, which makes Delta see a little sister instead of a man. And here comes the antagonist of the game, Sophia Lamb. She tells that Eleanor is her daughter and not Delta's. She commands our protagonist to kneel, take off his helmet, put a gun to his head, and pull the trigger. The last thing Delta hears is Eleanor's screams, and our protagonist dies, and that's the game Sunshines. Oh, never mind. Here comes time skip 10 years long, and the actual game will take place in 1968, which means 8 years after Jack terrorized Rapture and killed both Andrew Ryan and Frank Fontaine. Delta wakes up in a puddle and hears how someone wants to call him, but the connection gets lost. Going further, he sees some creature jumping from pillar to pillar and then it disappears in the structures. Close enough, there is a gatherer's garden, and when Delta approaches it, Eleanor, who has grown up since the last time, tries to mentally connect to her big daddy, but she manages to say only one word. Also here we find Electrobolt Plasmid by analogy with previous protagonist, but unlike Jack, Delta doesn't pass out, though he sees a little sister who tells that Eleanor has missed her father for a long time, but as soon as she finishes the sentence, the creature we have seen earlier drags her away. With the help of a new plasmid, Delta restores the communication system and the one who wanted to call us before calls again. This is Bridget Tenenbaum, our good old friend from the first game. She says she needs help and asks Delta to come meet her in Atlantic train station. So I guess the course is started. Soon enough, Delta meets another little sister, but here also comes that creature, so now it's time to fight. This is a big sister. These are grown-up little sisters who have dressed up in tough armor to protect younger ones from passing by weirdos along with big daddies. Though big sisters are stronger cause they are using plasmids like Incinerate and Telekinesis. They will attack us after we harvest or rescue a certain amount of little sisters, and they are a really tough enemy. But this time she escapes the inevitable death by running away. And here we find out that the girls are being kidnapped from surface and delivered in Rapture to become new little sisters. That's why they are in city again despite the fact Jack has rescued them in Bioshock 1. Though Big Sister is still alive, and in the next room she breaks the glass causing the flood in the building, so now Delta is on the bottom of the ocean. But his suit can handle the pressure easily. Delta goes through the corals and pieces of buildings, sees panoramic view of Rapture, and finally gets to the Atlantic train station to meet Tenenbaum. On the place, Delta finds hacking device, and hacking system in Bioshock 2 is way better than in the first game. Instead of these boring pipes, here just a needle, and we have to press the button in time for successful hacking, similar to skill checks in Dead by Daylight. When Delta makes his way further and pulls the lever to open the gate, Sophia Lamb herself calls him to threaten and sends splicers to kill him. They set the room on fire, but old planks can't handle it, so protagonist falls down in the water, giving me no chance to put a second main character death joke in one video. After some time, Eleanor connects Delta once again, but this time a bit longer. She's asking Delta to find and save her. Also, she gives him a telekinesis plasmid, which has almost none practical benefits. On the upper floor, Delta finally meets Tenenbaum. She has returned to Rapture to rescue new little sisters, cause she has found out girls began to disappear all over the world, and she did the equation and decided to stop this nightmare once again. Tenenbaum's speech gets interrupted by Sophia's public service announcement about Delta and how evil he is and how he must be killed in order for Rapture to be calmest place on Earth again. Of course. And now, while we have time fighting splicers to hold them unless Tenenbaum escapes with the little sisters, let me tell you something about Sophia Lamb's figure in Rapture. She was psychiatrist, a very good one I must admit. At first, she was working with Ryan, but their views were completely different, and over time their dissensions got more intense because Sophia gathered a lot of followers through her speeches. Eventually, Ryan invited her to public debates on big variety of topics to prove her wrong in her ideals, but he lost these debates and Sophia only got more followers, so she made some kind of cargo cult called the Rapture Family. But Andrew Ryan wasn't a fool. He hired a spy who found some evidence against Lamb, which was enough to arrest Sophia and fair amount of the Rapture Family followers. And of course, Ryan made every mention of Sophia be deleted. That's why we've never heard her name in the first game. But let's get back to what we've stopped at. Tenenbaum successfully escapes, but Delta will not be alone in his further journey. Tenenbaum introduces Augustus Sinclair, our new ally who will help Delta to get to Eleanor. Though firstly we need to get to Sinclair, so Delta takes the train to Ryan Amusements. When they arrive in there, we see that in order to go further in Fontaine headquarters, where Eleanor is being held, Delta has to melt the ice in front of the train to clear the way. Lucky Delta to have an incinerate plasmid somewhere here in Amusement Park. Though it's not for free and Delta needs to find Adam. And how can we get Adam? Find a little sister, kill her big daddy and harvest or cure her. Wait a second. Now we must adopt the girl in order to get Adam and walk with her through Adam gathering and protect her all this time, and only after that we can cure her? They couldn't really make the most boring mission from the first game a part of second game, could they? Yes, they could. And they did. What else? A DLC about protecting little sister? Never mind. By the way, while Delta is searching for corpses for little sister together, he can stop to watch different short animated scenes about ideals of Andrew Ryan and history of Rapture. Anyway, now we rescue little sister and have enough Adam to buy a plasmid. So backtrack to the Gatherer's Garden, on our way to which Sophia Lamb calls Delta and threatens him again. And the threat was not that hollow, cause here comes a big sister who I've already mentioned about. Though Delta deals with her and now he can return to the train and clear the way. Also here we find a diary of Sophia Lamb in which she tells that her physical participation in Eleanor's birth was minimized. So we can make a conclusion that Eleanor was born from artificial womb. Why am I telling you that? I don't know. Though Delta melts the ice on the trainway and we can now go further, so here comes Sinclair in flesh. Nice suit by the way. And before we start the train, Lamb splicers attack us, but that's just a warm-up for Delta. Here we enter the Pauper's Drop, and Sophia Lamb announces that she has blocked this place unless Delta is dead, but Sinclair tells us how we can deactivate lockdown. Delta just needs to find a security override key, which is held by Grace Holloway, the local governor. She's somewhere here, in the Sinclair Deluxe Hotel if being precise. But the entrance there is crushed by Brute Splicer right in front of Delta's eyes, and there is no other way, so we have to examine the location to find a camera, and do a research on one of these Brute Splicers to gain a new ability, Drill Dash, which allows to do a quick dash with the drill interaction overview. But I didn't find it very useful, except the fact that we can now enter Sinclair Deluxe to find Grace Holloway. She is the most loyal ally to Sophia Lamb. So loyal, Lamb has even entrusted her daughter Eleanor to Grace before Sophia was arrested. But someone has stolen Eleanor from her and turned her into one of little sisters. Grace was really distraught because she didn't live up to the trust of Sophia Lamb. Then someday Grace saw Eleanor walking with our protagonist. She tried to take the girl away, but Delta knocked her down, breaking her jaw. After that accident, Grace Holloway holds a strong detesting not just to Subject Delta, but to all the Big Daddies. Also, in her room we find an audio diary in which she's so upset about losing Eleanor and so self-disappointed. We find Grace behind a secret door in her room. She puts the key on the table and steps away, telling Delta to come take the key and finish his job, implying to kill her. But Delta will not do that, cause it is crucial for a good canonical ending. He takes the key, thanks Grace, and leaves the room. Lady Holloway is in state of shock now, cause she was ready to die and didn't believe at first when Delta just took the key and left. But she is saying thank you to Delta not only for sparing her life, but also for opening her eyes in matter that Delta is not a monster as she thought. Sophia Lamb is calling afterwards, and she's not very enthusiastic about this situation. She starts her average threatenings to protagonist, and that's how we leave Pauper's Drop to drive to Dionysus Park. But something goes wrong and our train gets shot with a rocket. Delta, no, not dies, he just gets thrown out of the train in the ocean, and the train with Sinclair on board reaches Dionysus Park. Though this park is flooded and Sinclair is short on air, so Delta through the ocean bottom has to reach a pumping station in Siren Alley to drain the water from the park. The man who deployed the rocket in the train was Father Simon Wells, one of the founders of the Rapture family. By that I mean he was the one who simplified Sophia's ideas just enough in order for Splicer's brains damaged by Adam to understand it and follow it unquestioningly. For Eleanor he will burn with a smile, as Sophia says about him. Also, Father Wells has a brother, which we find out in a diary in worthless attempt to open the door to the pumping station. In this diary, Simon tries to persuade his brother, Daniel, to join the Rapture family, but also tells us where we can find Daniel. And when I got to the place, something funny happens. I was just listening to a random diary I found, and Daniel appeared right in front of me, so I started to run after him and drill him at the same time, which allowed me to deal him a ton of damage without a proper fight. But then he jumped down, and eventually I got some of the boss fight, though a bit unfair. And from the deceased body of Daniel Wells, we get the diary with the code from the pumping station. But when Delta enters the code to the door, the light turns off. Sophia Lamb has turned down the power and Sinclair is trying to restore it. But it takes time, so we are forced to play a bit of tower defense here. Like we haven't done it several times before with Little Sisters. Whatever. Already inside pumping station, Delta finds Simon Wells as well. He is protecting the pump control key, so to get it, Delta has to kill the preacher. So the key is obtained and pump starts to drain Dionysus Park out. But Sophia Lamb makes water to flood Siren Alley instead. And Delta has to walk through the bottom once again to return to the train, and that's how we get to the Dionysus Park. As I had already said, this park was flooded until now, but as soon as Delta had drained it, Splicers arrived and started their shenanigans. The good thing is Sinclair has found a new working train here. The previous got shot by a rocket, if you recall. The bad thing is someone has locked himself in the booth, so we can't start the train yet. Though this someone offers us a deal. Delta gets rid of all the Little Sisters on the location, and he lets us use the train however we want afterwards. This man is Stanley Poole, and it looks like he's got a secrets to bury, but we have no other options, so let's do this boring ass adoptings and protectings and more protectings and rescues. Honestly, to this very moment I was so tired from this system that I was carrying girls to their hideout to cure them right after adopting, skipping the whole part of gathering. Anyway, while Delta gathering Adam through Little Sisters, after curing or harvesting Eleanor will show us fragments of memories from Adam, exactly what Stanley is trying to hide. I will return to this later. Right now, Stanley, as a former reporter, tells us what he has found on our protagonist. Turns out, Delta is just a serial number, not a name. His real name was Johnny Topside. He came to Rapture by himself in Diving Bell, but Ryan was scared enough, thought he was a spy from the surface, so he turned Johnny into Subject Delta. Then our protagonist met Eleanor as Little Sister, and Cox starts spinning. So what is Stanley trying to hide? Eleanor shows us. Stanley was spy Ryan hired to ruin Sophia Lamb. He somehow rose through the hierarchy in the Rapture family and got whole Dionysus Park for himself. He started to organize big mad parties with Sophia's money, which could lead for her bankruptcy. Young Eleanor noticed it and said Stanley she would tell her mom about it. Stanley got scared, so he kidnapped Eleanor and gave her to orphanage, where they turned her in little sister. Then he continued having a great time, but when he heard that Sophia Lamb was returning, he knew she would come for him, so he decided to flood the park, leaving no witnesses. When Delta returns to the train, Sophia is calling to say that she has already known what Stanley did, and she has forgiven him, but also she says that Stanley is responsible for Delta's becoming Big Daddy. Sophia asks protagonist if he can forgive Stanley Poole as Lamb has done. Nah, warning shot in the ceiling and on a train. Don't want to waste time on some trash like that. Let him live his miserable life, and we've headed to Fontaine Futuristics where Eleanor is being held. And I think this is the right time to talk about why Sophia needs Eleanor so bad. Despite the fact she is mother of her, we can say with certain level of confidence, Sophia doesn't really love her child as a mother, more like how scientists love their project. She sees Eleanor not as human being, more like as an investment in her position in her cult's hierarchy. And Sophia wants to make almost a god out of Eleanor by supplying her with a lot of Adam. And it seems like that was her plan since very birth of Eleanor and even before that. And I simply cannot admit the perfection of use such a charactonym as Lamb. Almost biblical concept, but fate is subject of the next video, so let's get back on track now. At the entrance in Fontaine Futuristics, a camera scans Delta and starts playing an audio message from Gilbert Alexander. In his diary, he says that by the time someone hears this message, he will be clinically insane. He asks to check his next message in security checkpoint further, which will open only for sane enough person, so it won't work on splicers. Sinclair recalls that Gilbert Alexander has been involved in development of Big Daddies on earlier stages, so he must be connected to Delta and Eleanor in some way, and we have to find that out. Approaching the security checkpoint Alexander was talking about, Delta sees a weird turret bot with a monitor attached to it. This thing is controlled by Alex the Great, as he calls himself. That's Gilbert Alexander, well, what's left of him. When Delta enters in range of bioscan that starts to determine the sanity of protagonist, Alex the Great gets surprised and summons another Big Daddy to stop Delta. This Big Daddy looks exactly like our protagonist, except he doesn't have free will. That's so-called Alpha Series Big Daddy, and from now on they will get in our way as a common enemy, though they're weaker than daddies who accompany little sisters. When Bioscan approves Delta's sanity, we find another message from Gilbert. He explains that he has been exposed to a massive dose of Adam and has started to mutate and lose his mind. He begs protagonist to kill him because he simply cannot do it himself. He gives an audio diary with a code word for the next door where instruction is. On the first door the voice code works perfectly, but on the second, well, when Delta tries to open it with the diary, Alex the Great starts singing through his bot to corrupt the system. That way the door can't be opened until we destroy this bot somehow. That somehow is finding and destroying 4 signal relays, so Alex the Great will lose control to the bot and we will be able to enter the code without anyone seeing. First one is just in some random corridor and Alex gets pissed when Delta breaks it. To get to the second one, protagonist has to participate in Alex's handmade beauty contest and win by defeating few waves of enemies. The third one is in a room full of water under voltage, and the last one awaits in some room with bear statue. Also here Delta finds strange plasmid that teleports away as soon as Delta touches it. It appears another place and by repeating it several times the plasmid flows and teleports away, taking Delta as well, and we see some other places. And of course the reward in matter of gin tonic after that. As you can figure out, this was an easter egg to the unreleased teleportation plasmid, but it was a bit funny. When we break down the last relay, Alex's bot starts lagging and eventually explodes, and we can finally open the door. Behind this door, Gilbert has left some goods and the next message, as well as a button to open the laboratories, where what's left of him lays. But first of all, why do we need to follow Alexander's diaries? Isn't he just an unsuccessful experiment of Sophia Lamb? The thing is, in order to pass further, Delta needs a genetic key from Gilbert Alexander, who's Alex the Great now. And to get this genetic key, we have to find the present Gilbert in his laboratory. Inside the lab, it's pitch dark, but Delta finds the last message from Gilbert Alexander. He explains that lights sting his eyes now, and protagonist needs to turn it on himself to see normally, and not through the little circle of a flashlight. Now Delta is forced to find two switches to turn the light on, and when he does, another diary of Gilbert starts playing. In this one, he explains why he has absorbed so much Adam only to turn in this weird something. He and Sophia Lamb wanted to create the first true utopian, as they say. In order to do that, they needed to expose someone to a massive amount of Adam, and the first guinea pig was Gilbert Alexander himself. The second one was Eleanor, but her changes were less physical, but not less grotesque, as Gilbert says. And in Huge Tank we see something big and unpleasant. That is exactly what Gilbert has become, Alex the Great. In the diary he tells us how to kill him. Delta needs to bring 4 samples of Adam-infused flowers to lure the creature out. When he collects all of them and injects it into the system, at first Alex the Great summons a bunch of splicers and Alpha Series Big Daddies, but after Delta deals with them, Alex starts cursing protagonist, cause how dare he buy him out with these tasty and delicious Adam-infused flowers. Anyways, Alex the Great is close enough to take a gene sample to obtain a genetic key, and here we're forced to choose whether Delta kills Alex the Great as Gilbert asked, or we let him leave, taking his promise about him living outside. And I want to argue here a bit, because in order to get a good canonical ending, we have to let Alex leave. But is it really leaving? While being in clear consciousness, Gilbert Alexander wanted to get himself killed, not out of suicidal thoughts, but because he knew he would become insane, grotesque creature who will bring suffering to people. And honestly, 9 times out of 10 I would kill Alex the Great. Not because I think he's abnormal or wrong in some way, but just out of mercy. I would like myself get killed if I mutated in something insane and grotesque as well. So I think that Delta should have fulfilled Gilbert's last will in order to get the good ending. Okay, back to the plot now. Delta inserts genetic key in a bottom fuel station and it opens a secret passage in Persephone, the home of Sophia Lamb and a place where Eleanor is being held. Soon enough Delta finds the exact room where his daughter is. Finally they will be together again, we just need to open the door. And when Delta pulls the lever, there's 2 big sisters appear out of thin air, and now we have to fight with both of them at the same time. After protagonist has danced with them to death, the quarantine chamber has opened and Delta steps inside of it to go through the disinfection and sees Sophia sitting behind Eleanor. She's telling us that Eleanor has just wanted a father. That's why she has found a way to bring Delta back to life, and she has watched every action of our protagonist to form her own views. But Sophia knows that Delta and Eleanor are bonded together, so Delta is sentenced if Eleanor's heart stops beating. That's why Lamb starts to choke her own daughter. Delta tries to stop her, but the glass is too thick, so he falls unconscious when the door finally opens and Eleanor falls near him. Though Eleanor cannot die because of the massive amount of Adam inside her. Sophia commands to move Delta's body in some room and don't ever touch him. When Delta wakes up, Eleanor calls and says sorry for what her mother has done, but Eleanor wants to save her father, so she sends a little sister for help. This little sister inserts something inside Delta and we gain control over the girl. Yep, here we can see how little sisters sees the massive world around them, which is, from their perspective, quite prettier than in reality. Eleanor guides us to Sophia's office, where we can open the chambers where father and daughter are held. Also here we see Sophia commands to catch our friend Sinclair. After we open the chambers, Eleanor asks to bring her big sister suit. She would do this herself, but the suffocating experience has weakened her, so protagonist in a little girl's body should collect and deliver the whole costume to Eleanor. And I must say, sometimes the horror of rapture blinks through the joyful view of little sisters, like this time when we find piece of suit, or when we gather Adam. When we collect all the parts, the suit, the helmet and the weapon and bring it to Eleanor, she, following her father's path, cures little sister, and we appear in Delta's body again and see how Eleanor comes to rescue protagonist. Now we have a companion, and she gives us a plasmid which allows us to summon Eleanor in a fight. Though Sophia is not sleeping, she says that Rapture is a city of monsters and she wants to bury all of this once and for long. She is about to crush a building into the trench, so we have to find Sinclair and make our way out of the city as soon as possible. Good thing that here in Persephone, Sinclair's lifeboat is located, which will help us to get to the surface, but our friend is not on board, though he wouldn't leave it without any need, so something must have happened to him. To make our life more difficult, Sophia blocks the building and tells us that the Rapture family has placed bombs under the foundation of the building, so if Delta doesn't surrender, everyone here will fall into the abyss. We can cancel the block from the holding wing, but we gotta hurry in order to do that. And there we meet Sinclair, in suit of Big Daddy. The Rapture family has caught him and turned into one. Sophie is controlling his body and he must fight with the control even just to talk to us. He is holding Master Key, which we need to remove the block from the building. And it's sad cause Delta is forced to kill his friend to make his goal come true. But Sinclair is ready to die, because, as he says, it's better than to live like that. Also, it turns out that Sophia Lamb is in a lifeboat now, and she's inviting Eleanor to join her and leave all the Rapture behind. But our girl is on the Delta's side, so she refuses the invitation from the mother. Sinclair is locked in control room and Delta has to find audio diaries to get the code. And now we have to kill Sinclair. His last words were,
So long, kid. Thank you.
fucking heartbreaking to me. But we still have to save our souls, so we use Master Key to cancel the block of the building, and now to the lifeboat. Sophia, in her turn, bombs the ballast compressors, so the boat now is too heavy to launch. Eleanor comes up with the idea. She can boil the water to help the boat to rise, but she will need help to do it. The help of little sisters. So now we have to visit 2 kindergartens and wake all the little sisters up. After we have done it, Eleanor starts boiling water with little sisters, and Delta holds Stone of Splicers to protect them. And finally, boat is actually ready to go, but the room gets flooded. Our protagonist with his daughter takes the elevator and here comes the last run to the boat, but the way appears rigged with explosives. Eleanor turns back to take Delta with her into the boat with teleportation, but our protagonist is too far, so Eleanor teleports successfully, but Delta explodes. Though he manages to grab onto the bars of the lifeboat, he takes a look on the drowned city one last time, climbs on top of the lifeboat that floats upwards, and sees how Eleanor, who has learned mercy from her father, saves Sophia Lamb from drowning, cause the boat inside got flooded after explosion. The game ends with the scene where Delta looks at Eleanor. He's almost dead, but our little big sister daughter injects a syringe in protagonist to save his mind inside Adam. And then scene fades in perspective of Eleanor looking at the body of her father, who has saved her and has become a good role model for her. And of course here are all the saved little sisters, and beautiful view on the dusk. Honestly, I can't say anything unbiased here, cause Bioshock 2 was and is my favorite game in whole franchise. Yeah, I've already told you that gathering Adam is fucking boring and makes you wanna kill yourself, but first of all, it's not really necessary. You can just pick up little sister and take her right to the hideout. You will still get some Adam that way. And second of all, other parts of the game are brilliant. I do adore this father-daughter dynamic, it's fascinating for me. 2K Marine had the task to make something able to compete with the first game of the series, and they did. Almost everything in second part is better, and it's fantastic. Music in game is on a different level, you could hear that yourself. And also want to admit the voice actors, especially Sinclair's one, Doug Boyd. This accent is something. I rarely have such a pleasing for my ears from voice actors. Brilliant job. I could speak and speak about this game for hours, but you don't really need my artistic yapping, do you? So thank you for watching, see you next time, and I'm dropping the mic.
Daddy, won't you please come home? Daddy, do you have